You need a hand carrying something? Okay, I am setting up a new computer right now, and I can see that it launched right into streaming before I realized it was on. Hi, everyone. I'm just trying to turn on my be able to answer your questions while I paint here in just a moment. So thanks for joining me and coming on to the chat. There we go, muted that. I'm just setting up a new laptop, and I wanted to make sure my stream was working. I'm testing out also my internet connection because I actually, usually I bring my router right into the studio, and today this new computer seems to be really good at picking up my video signal. So we're testing things out today. So if you lose me all of a sudden, then we'll know I need to tweak the settings a bit more. It's a Saturday morning. I should be thinking about making lunch. My husband is renovating our bathroom, and I'm setting up this new computer. And yes, I'm so excited that my new laptop has arrived. I'm not struggling with, hopefully this should be solving a lot of my technical issues that I've had since Christmas. So let's test out and see if the high definition camera works. That is usually over my work surface. And looks like you should be able to see my work surface. You can see my palette is covered right now because I haven't been painting yet today. Happy New Year to those of you I haven't seen yet. I've been doing video in my Fearless Artist community. We've been doing some live sessions and painting, or not painting yet, but just planning our year actually. And so it's, I have been talking to some of you, but others I haven't seen in a long time because I don't go on YouTube here live very often. And certainly not spur of the moment like this. So I'm just kind of, we might as well do some painting while we're testing things out. That seems like a good way to test. Of course, now I know the camera's working, I could probably just turn it right off. But we can do a little bit of painting. And I'll zoom in a tiny bit. I just uncovered my palette. If you haven't seen my palette before, I talk a lot about supplies. I have links on my website to the things that I love to use. But this is a palette made by Robax.com. They make really gorgeous customized watercolor palettes. And this one holds 64 colors, not enough. Not enough to fill all the colors that I have, but it's got enough to keep me inspired. And when I feel like there's a certain color in my collection that I'd like to use that's not in here, these little wells pop right out and I can swap it in. Before I start painting, I always moisten my palette with a spray bottle. That gets it nice and juicy in a hurry. And that spray bottle sits close by because I'm always wanting those juicy colors. And I do a lot of painting with my spray bottle actually. So tidying up because as I'm painting, often I'll take the colors that I'm using out so I don't forget which color I want to use. Or because so often, like if you have a whole bunch of dark colors in a row, it's really hard to remember which one's the indigo, which one's the Soda Light Genuine, which one's the Moon Glow, and the neutral tint. And I don't want to grab the wrong one when I'm in the middle of a painting. I'm going to throw a little bit more light at my work surface here and get rid of some shadows. Let's take a look here and see what we can do. You know, one of the parts of painting, an important part of painting when you get started is always just getting ready. And I think we don't want to rush our getting ready process because it can be a part of resetting and getting into the mindset to paint. And so, you know, spraying my palette, maybe tidying up my workspace, choosing some paper, thinking about the brush I want to use, getting fresh water usually, and my water is only semi-fresh right now. You know, those are all parts of getting into the zone, getting into the mindset to paint. And if you have followed me for very long at all, you know that I love talking about getting even more further into the mindset by starting out with some play and some experimentation. And so I'm going to do a little bit of playful painting here. I'm seeing some questions as well, and I'm going to answer those in a minute. I see one from Coloring with D saying, I'm very new to watercolor. I have a natural bristle brush, and when I go to paint with it, it bends over and stays there, creating an L shape. I'm not really, like, it just doesn't go back into that nice point. You can see this one, as soon as it's wet and I've started stroking it, a natural brush is always very soft. And often when you're a beginner in watercolor, and this is Indanthrone Blue that I'm getting here, when you're new to watercolor, often you want a brush that gives you a little bit more control. I'll show you, I'll compare here in just a second. This one, my water container is almost empty here. Just gonna put some water on my paper. I'm using, lately I've been using a lot of this Honamula watercolor collection paper. It's 100% cotton and it's really beautiful. Okay, so if your brush is creating a shape you don't like I said, a natural brush will often be very soft, and so it does flex and bend quite a lot more. Whereas if you have a brush that's a synthetic brush, it's going to have a little bit more snap and stiffness to it. So if you're feeling really, what's the word, out of control maybe with a very soft brush, you might find yourself being more comfortable with synthetics in those early stages when you're learning how to control the paint. Now this is Indanthrone Blue, and it's a beautiful color I've been using lately. And you can see why it's such a rich blue, but it also has this push. You can see it's already just spread right out and followed the water that I've sprayed on the page. And for me, when I start painting, I want to play. There's a blue jay shrieking at me outside the window. It's very loud. But I want to let the watercolor do its thing. So I'm starting out with a warm-up that has a lot of rich color. Let's get even darker with that Indanthrone Blue. And I want to use a fair bit of water as well and let that flow start to happen. And it feels out of control, but that's a good thing, because what happens is when you let the watercolor do its thing, you start to learn how to watch it and how to pay attention and how to understand what it wants to do. And if you know what watercolor wants to do, then you can start to work with it and start to play with those natural flowing processes. So I'm just going to wet the whole page here. I've given up on trying to keep parts of it dry, but it's going to be dry or moist in different proportions across the paper. And I'm tilting a bit, so gravity is helping me here. We see this downward flow happening. The other comment I would have is if you're struggling with a brush that doesn't hold its shape well, it very possibly could be a flaw in the brush if you've just bought it. It could be an error in the way you've stored it. If it's been, if you leave it sitting in your water container, that's kind of a cardinal sin. It always makes me cringe when I see a new painter, they rinse their brush and they leave their brush sitting in the water container, because that will train the bristles to bend. And so if you've done that, one way to try to fix it is to purchase, or even a little bit of soap might actually help. Coat your bristles with gum arabic or with a little bit of soap, and just enough so that it's like hairspray for the brush, and then let it dry and sit in the shape you want it to keep. And hopefully you can train it back into that shape. So that's a few of the issues you might have. If it's like that straight from the store, I would actually go back to the store and ask the store owner to replace that brush and let them know that you've had trouble with the flaws in that brush. Yeah, I'm happy to answer your questions. Right now I'm looking at Indanthrone Blue, and I want to show you this color because it is so beautiful. We might just not go anywhere else because I really am supposed to be cooking lunch here in a few minutes. But cooking lunch, I don't actually make lunch usually. Everyone kind of fends for themselves, and I do. I go all out at supper time. Life of an artist. Family gets their own meals. Right now the paper is damp. In this area, it's not even very shiny, so I'm using a fairly dry brush. A really wet brush, I'll show you what it would do in this area where the paper is not as moist as it is down below. I can create blooms where an imbalance of water will start to create edges on my paper. I'm going to zoom in so you can see that. You can see Indanthrone Blue is a real, really welcomes watermarks and blooms. It really is a color that it's actually pretty fun to play with some of those watermarks and get them going. You can use that to create texture with salt. And I'm going to just sprinkle a little bit of salt over here. Salt will push the pigment and the water a little bit, and so you'll get little sparkly shapes in your wash. The deal with salt is it's unpredictable. If your paper is too dry, it's not going to do much. If it's too wet, it's going to dissolve so much that you're not going to see the effect. Certain colors don't show the salt as well either. So we really have to recognize that when you start bringing effects like salt in, you give up a little bit of control. The other thing I like to do with the Indanthrone Blue, and I think I was zoomed in too close for you to really see where I was sprinkling my salt. We'll zoom out a bit. So it's up in here is where I've sprinkled just a few grains of salt. We'll let that sit and see what it does. Down here I'm going to use a spray bottle and just a half a squirt to give us more of those pretty watermarks and texture. This looks like, you know, a winter's day to me. It doesn't have to have a lot of detail. So there is a question about the number of colors I have in my palette. I have to tell you, I love color, and I do not apologize for that. You do not need this many colors in order to do well and enjoy painting in watercolor, but you are allowed to do whatever you want. It is your art. And so for me, I will not use 60 colors. There's 64 colors in this palette. I will not use all 64 in my painting. What I will do is I will choose 5 or 6, and I will usually what I'll do is the Indanthrone Blue is over here. Often I'll pull that out, just put it beside my paper. And then if I choose to add new colors, I'll pull those out of the palette and use and work from those as well. And then I know what I'm using, and I can usually draw from that selection before I incorporate a new color. And the key to really using color with confidence actually is working first of all with a small range of color. Because I've been painting for 20 plus years, I have a lot of knowledge of the different colors in my palette. I don't know all of them really well. Certain colors I know better than others, but I have an understanding of what they will do and how they're going to act when I put them on the paper. I know that Indanthrone Blue, for example, is one I can use in a wet and wet wash like this, and you can see it does a lot of moving. It does those beautiful watermarks. It just creates some really beautiful, beautiful happy accidents in the painting. It's been a bit of a crazy week. We started the week with a lot of big plans for all the things I wanted to get accomplished, and so when I come to the studio right now, I kind of need some downtime. And so I don't want to think about making a perfect painting right now. I just want to think about having a little bit of fun, finding my place of kind of rest and relaxation, enjoying watercolor for the way it can encourage my creative mental health. And so I try not to put pressure on myself to make anything magical. One thing I'm really happy to see as I'm testing today, the only reason I'm live right now is because I got a new laptop and I'm testing out my video settings. So I'm really happy to see that it does seem to be streaming and nice and crisp, and everything's set so that I can continue doing the live lessons that I do almost every week on my website. You can find out more info on that at learn.angelafehr.com. I am doing also a free beginner workshop at the end of January, and there's information on that as well at angelafehr.com. We are calling it the Beginner Bootcamp, and it's absolutely free. The goal is painting in watercolor in a playful way, never feeling guilty about the fact that maybe you're not the kind of watercolor student that somebody else is. I'm not a very academic watercolor student. I just want to paint and have fun with color. And so I don't spend a lot of time in research and planning. I just come and paint, and I learn by putting the paint on the paper and watching. And it's a really fun way to learn. I'm going to add some water. You can see the salt is creating little sparkles of texture here, but they're not really as interesting as what the Indanthrone will do on its own with a little encouragement. So I'm just going to add some water. And I love painting with a spray bottle because it encourages the paint to do what it does best, to really move and mingle. And we can have a little bit of fun by adding some more colors here. Let's see what we need here. I'm trying to think about adding another color, and one thing we'll often do is when we have a painting like this and we think we want to add a new color, we'll go completely the other direction and add like the opposite, a complementary color. So I'd add an orange. I don't want to rush into adding a complementary color though, because it could create mud. So I'm just going to add a color that's just a little bit beside this color on the color wheel. And I'm thinking, I'm leaning towards a cobalt teal. Those of you who watch me regularly know that's one of my favorite colors to use. It's a really easy color to work with. And it's a little bit opaque in the palette. This one's made by Daniel Smith. I actually think my Indanthrone Blue is made by Core, for those of you who have been watching and would like to add it to your palette. And because I'm introducing in a color that's only slightly different, I get a really nice transition. It's not too dramatic, and it's a little bit seamless, and that's a good way to start. I'm also getting a lot of dark color in here, and I'm going to go lighter a bit and lose some of that dark by adding some more water. In my watercolor beginner bootcamp, which you can sign up for using the banner link at the top of the page at angelafehr.com, I'm going to be going over the supplies that I use and kind of demystifying that, because I think one thing that people really struggle with when they start painting, we're going to add a green, is choosing how to choose the right supplies. I know that most of us, when we start painting, we're on a budget. We don't want to waste our money. I want to add a green, but I don't know which one. Let's go with green gold. So we're moving from the blue to the teal to a green. It's kind of a slow transition into a bit of a rainbow of colors. I'm sharing my studio with my husband's downstairs renovating our bathroom, and so you might hear the odd power tool here. That green gold really is adding a pop of almost a yellow to the painting here. Adding water to let it flow and incorporate it into the rest of the painting. This is an exploration into loose and fluid watercolor. It doesn't have to be a thing. You're not going to get a finished painting with a wet and wet beginning like this, at least not most of the time. You're just creating a start, a place for your imagination to start to take hold and see what the painting could become. So yeah, I'm just testing out a new laptop today, my new streaming settings, so that I can continue to do my live lessons that I do in my Fearless Artist community. That's my learning site where I teach lessons every couple times a month. I do live lessons, and that's also where I keep my course catalog of 28 plus courses. And you can find all the info on that at learn.angelafehr.com. And I'd love to have you join me for my beginner bootcamp. It is really fun to introduce beginners to a guilt-free way of painting in watercolor, one where you don't have to feel embarrassed by your messy beginnings, because we all have those messy beginnings. They contribute to our great paintings that we do in the future. In fact, my messy beginnings often have turned into messy middles. Here I am doing a first layer it's not really a thing, it's just an experiment in watching watercolor and learning what it does. And as I observe the paint, I get ideas and I start to imagine. and I learned strategies for working with the paint that help me create paintings that I really love. And so that's something that's really exciting for me. I have to give myself permission to make a lot of messes if I want to make great paintings. So Beginner Bootcamp, I'm just going to wrap up here. Beginner Bootcamp starts January 28th. If you're interested in joining that free, it's a 3-day workshop. We do 3 sessions designed to help you feel like you have a handle on a great beginning for watercolor for you, and an understanding of where to go and what you need to make paintings that you love, and with the goal actually of becoming your own favorite artist, making art that's deeply satisfying for you. It's so much fun to teach a course that is designed to encourage students and help them feel like, yes, this is something you can do. Yeah, we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to switch back my camera just because I'm testing out my video settings for this new laptop. It's been really great to have a new piece of technology that's working the way it's supposed to. My old laptop, I actually would plug it in, and because the port for the plug-in was going, I would have to really just kind of prop it up really gently so that my laptop didn't run out of battery and die in the middle of a broadcast. So I'm so glad that I have this new new setup, new laptop that I can actually now feel a little more confident that what I'm streaming is actually going to work. So just wanted to thank you for joining me here live. I'm going to go cook some lunch and spend some time with my family on this Saturday, and plan for the week ahead and Beginner Bootcamp starting January 28th. Again, you can sign up for that at angelafehr.com. I will throw a link in the description below the video. And there's just a banner right at the top of the website. It can be the first thing you see if you're used to looking at the top of the page. Sign up. We'd love to have you there. We're actually going to be giving away a really big prize as well during the bootcamp for those who stay for all 3 sessions. So you can be thinking about that as well. Thank you, and bye for now.